I'd been married to Eric for 10 years. He complained I was getting old, that I'd lost my charm, that I was boring. Almost every night Eric would come home reeking of alcohol, that I'd try to help him, but he'd shove me away, shouting, "Don't touch me. Go back to your kitchen." Eric's mom, who lived together with us, would yell from the bathroom in her impatient tone, "Rachel, why is there no toilet paper?" My 7-year-old son Mike tripped over his toy car and fell to the ground, crying and rolling around, all while cursing, "Damn toy car. I'm gonna smash it." I stood there, watching the chaos unfold in my home, and for the first time I felt completely hopeless. Before I left with David, I didn't tell anyone that I was disgusted by my husband, repelled by my son, and had always clashed with my mother-in-law. David was my neighbor, my childhood friend. Just like in novels, I never fell in love with my childhood friend, David. I ended up marrying Eric, a man I met much later. But unlike in novels, this was real life. 10 years of marriage to Eric, and what I had once thought was deep, youthful love had withered into mutual resentment. Suddenly, I felt a warm touch on my shoulder. It was David. That he was handsome, charming, and yet, contrary to his polished appearance, he was rebellious at heart. That I knew he liked me. Back in college he confessed his feelings, but I turned him down. That I had fallen for Eric at first sight. But David didn't distance himself from me. In fact, after I married Eric, he became my only friend. That I had been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years while David worked abroad for 7. He only came back a couple of years ago. Had always comforted me, tried to lift my spirits, but he knew where the line was. He never crossed it. With a half smile he asked, "What's wrong?" "Too scared to leave." I knew him well. If I said no, he'd turn right around and send me back. But I had to leave. If I stayed in that house any longer, I was going to lose my mind. The night I made up my mind to leave was just another ordinary evening. But somehow that night I finally felt the urge to escape, to flee from the life that had trapped me for 10 years. That night Eric came home just like always, smelling of alcohol. That I tried to get close to him, and on instinct he jumped up, furrowing his brow. "Get away from me. You smell like grease." That I took off my apron, intending to hang his suit jacket up, but he shoved me aside. "Go back to your kitchen." I froze, standing there. So this was it. Everything I had given to this family over the past 10 years, and this was the respect I got in return. Susan, my mother-in-law, who had always lived with us, yelled from the bathroom, "Rachel, why is there no toilet paper?" My son, playing with his toy cars, tripped and fell, crying and rolling on the floor. "Damn toy car. I'm gonna smash you." I didn't rush to help him. With tears and snot all over his face, he screamed at me, "You're a bad mom. I don't want you." My son had picked up his father's attitude. He treated me the same way Eric did. I dropped my hands and quietly watched the mess around me. Suddenly I felt utterly powerless. Eric came out of the master bathroom, saw me standing there, and coldly asked, "Is dinner ready?" I snapped out of it, helped Mike up, and quickly grabbed a new roll of toilet paper from the utility room. Susan's voice came again. "You're so bad at household chores. I really don't know what Eric sees in you." I rarely retorted, but I couldn't take it anymore. "Then why don't you tell your son to divorce me and marry someone more capable?" To my surprise, Susan was left speechless, momentarily stunned by my response. I didn't wait for her to react. I turned and walked away. Eric saw something was off with me and furrowed his brows. "What's your problem, and where's my chicken nuggets?" I glanced at him coldly. "In the kitchen. You can serve yourself." Susan walked out of the bathroom, pointed at me, and yelled, "Rachel, you've gotten bold. My son works his ass off every day, and you simply stay at home taking care of the kids, and this is how you repay him. You can't even serve a simple dinner." My son, covered in grease from his food, looked up from his plate and sneered at me. "Mom's always lying around at home and still criticizes me. My friend's mom looks so pretty. You're just an ugly monster. I want Annie to be my mom. She's so nice and pretty." Annie was Mike's art teacher. I'd met her a few times. She was friendly, young, and beautiful. Mike had told me several times he wanted Annie to be his mom. I thought it was just a child's harmless fantasy, but it turned out he really hated me. I looked at Mike. This time I remained remarkably calm and said softly, "If you like her so much, let her be your mom." Mike froze, glancing at his father, unsure of what to do. Eric slammed his fork on the table, his voice rising. "What are you talking about? Rachel, Mike's just a kid. What does he know? He's your son. You will always be his mom." "Mom, go get the chicken nuggets." Susan shot me a glare but did as Eric said and went to the kitchen. Dinner was as quiet as usual, everyone eating in their own world. Only Mike occasionally made noise, struggling with a chicken wing he couldn't bite through. He pouted, looked at me and said, "Mom, help me tear the chicken wing." Mike was 7, but he still acted like a 3-year-old, unable to do the smallest thing without asking for help. If this had happened before, I would have gladly done it. I used to put him at the center of my world. But now, he only frustrated me. He even broke my heart. After a moment's hesitation, I reached out to help him, but Mike pulled back, annoyed. "Why are you so slow? I want Annie to help me instead." I set my bowl down, feeling my frustration build to a boiling point. Eric looked at me, then at Mike. "All right, let Grandma help you. Mom, help him tear it." Susan couldn't refuse Eric's request, knowing she relied on her son for everything. I rubbed my temples, feeling utterly exhausted. I did most of the housework every day. I understood Eric was tired from work. But I wasn't exactly idle either. All the small tasks around the house were on me. If I complained, they'd say I was just whining. But the truth was, before I became a housewife, I earned more than he did. But then I got married, got pregnant, and everyone around me insisted I take on the responsibility of the family. Everything had to revolve around the kids and my husband, and I sacrificed my career to stay home and take care of them. But what did I get in return? A husband who thought I was too old and told me to stay in the kitchen. A mother-in-law who thought I was useless, just spending her son's money. A son who looked down on me and wanted someone else to be his mother. He had forgotten who fought and struggled to bring him into this world. He was as selfish as his father. That night, I didn't eat dinner. For the first time, I left early. Eric came back to the room, shot me a look of disdain and said, "I really don't understand what you're upset about. Mike's just a kid. Are you mad at him?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Eric, do you think I'm angry just because of Mike?" Eric's face darkened. "What did I do now? I'm really tired every day. Can you stop being unreasonable?" I looked at his familiar face, but all I felt was distance. "Eric, you hate that I stay at home, don't you? But don't forget, it was you who begged me to stay home, and the money to start your company came from me and my parents' savings." Eric impatiently glanced at me. "I haven't forgotten. I didn't hate you." I let out a cold laugh. "Is that so?" Eric looked at me briefly, a hint of guilt in his eyes. He grabbed a pillow and muttered, "I'll sleep in the other room." I stared at the door as it closed. Feeling a wave of nausea and suffocation, I walked out of the room and was greeted by the mess everywhere. Leftover food was scattered across the dining table, the dirty dishes piled up, and the living room was full of toys and clutter. I sighed and began to clean up. By the time I finished, it was already 1 a.m. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I called David. I just needed someone to talk to. On the surface, my family seemed perfect, but no one truly cared about me. David understood me well. He knew that if I was calling him, it meant I was hurt. I'd complained before, but back then I felt happy because I loved them. I wanted to take care of them because they were the people I loved. But it seemed that they never loved me in return. They took everything I did for granted. He didn't ask why, he just asked if I wanted to go abroad to clear my mind. I agreed. "Rachel, do you want to go back?" David's voice brought me back to the present. I looked up at him, smiled faintly and said, "No, let's go." Before we boarded the plane, no one called me. David took my hand. "All right, you wanted to relax, so don't think about them." I looked at David's face and suddenly realized I might be selfish. I didn't love him, but I was using him, using his company and his love to try to wash away the hurt I'd received from my family. I weakly asked, "David, will you hate me?" David's grip tightened for a moment, then he smiled again. "I'm just happy you thought of me first. I'm glad you called." We spent 3 weeks in Sri Lanka, and in those 3 days I didn't think about Eric or anyone else. I was so relaxed, truly at ease. I hadn't felt that happy in a long time. We started in Colombo, the capital, and then traveled to Dambulla, Kandy, Yala, Gal, and back to Colombo. On the first day, as soon as we got off the plane, locals performed a Kandian dance for us. It's a traditional dance performed at weddings, festivals, and for important guests. David and I visited a fish market, and when we arrived at the elephant orphanage, we sat by the river eating curry rice while watching elephants swim and bathe. Their innocence was a small balm to my soul. We also visited the Dambulla Cave Temple, home to exquisite 2000-year-old murals and statues. Finally, we went hiking on Horton Plains, a place known as the end of the world. It was so quiet, only the wind, the birds, and sometimes we'd encounter peacocks and deer. At 5 a.m., we drove through dense forests. We didn't spot any leopards, but we saw crocodiles, rhinos, monkeys, and all kinds of birds. I faced the wind, gazing at the clear blue sky and white clouds. It was in that moment I truly understood the meaning of "from now on the world is before me, pointing me to wherever I want to go." David stood at the edge of a cliff, suddenly shouting, "Rachel, you have to be happy." I watched his profile and for the first time, my eyes stung with emotion. I blinked, then shouted back, "David, so do you?" 3 weeks passed quickly and I had to return to the despairing days that awaited me. Before we parted, David took my hand. "Rachel, if you're feeling unhappy, come find me. I'll always be here for you." I ran into his arms, tears spilling from my eyes uncontrollably. When I got home, I dropped my suitcase and decided to finally have a serious conversation with Eric. Those days in Sri Lanka had given me a lot of time to think. And I came to many realizations that I couldn't stay at home as just a housewife forever. I needed to work. I had my own value and dreams. I cleaned the house again, and as I was wiping the door, Eric came in. He was holding Mike's hand, smiling broadly. The moment he saw me, his smile froze, his voice dropped low. "You actually came back." Mike ran over and pushed me. "Why did you come back?" "I wish Mom would never come back." I paused what I was doing, grabbed Mike's hand and said with a smile, "Mike, don't be so rude. In your mom. No matter what Mike said, he was still my child. I shouldn't. If Mom and Dad get divorced, I can have Auntie as my mom." Before I could finish, Mike shocked me with his words. It seemed that in Mike's eyes, I wasn't even worthy of being his mom. Eric grabbed Mike and ordered sharply, "Mike, go inside." I sat down on the sofa, feeling utterly bitter. I thought if possible I would still want to save this family. But I was just dreaming. I wrinkled my nose and spoke without thinking. "Eric, your cologne is really strong." Eric froze for a second before speaking slowly. "Maybe I accidentally got my assistant's scent on me." I laughed coldly in my mind. "Really? But it smells just like the cologne Annie wears." I had noticed that unique, sweet scent on Annie the first time I met her, and I remembered it well. Eric frowned. "You're overthinking it." I didn't respond, just gave a faint smile. "Rachel, where did you go with David this time?" I looked up, completely taken aback that Eric even knew my whereabouts. I thought he didn't care at all about what I did. But once again he was using David to pick on me. I shook my head and said, "Eric. David's been a long-time friend of mine. I don't like him and my relationship with him is purely platonic." Eric snorted. "So in these days you've been with him. What did you two do?" "Do close friends disappear for 3 weeks together? We never crossed any lines. These days I wasn't feeling well and he's the only friend I have in this city. He took me out to get some air." "What's wrong with that?" I could feel my anger building. 10 years. In the 10 years of our marriage, I hardly ever spent time alone with David. I was afraid Eric would get jealous. I've rarely met with David in person and most of our contact was through calls. And David even went abroad for 7 years because of my marriage. I had explained this countless times, but Eric never believed me. This time was the only time in the past decade that I went out with David alone, and we didn't do anything. Besides, what right did Eric have to criticize me? He was the one who betrayed our marriage first. Eric sneered. "You think I'll believe that?" We stood there in a stalemate when the door opened again. Susan walked in, arm in arm with a young woman. That woman was none other than the person Mike had been dreaming of as his new mother, Annie. Susan glared at me. "What are you two arguing about now? I could hear you both outside." Annie wore a white blouse and looked particularly gentle. She had a graceful appearance, a sweet voice, and gave me a slight smile as she greeted me. "Rachel." I looked at her, and I noticed the necklace she was wearing. It was from my favorite brand. Coincidentally, I had found it in Eric's pocket just a month ago, so it wasn't meant for me after all. The next moment Mike, hearing the noise, pushed the door open and came out. "Aunt Annie, you're so slow. Why are you only coming back now?" Annie gently patted Mike's head, showing affection. "Did you have fun at the amusement park?" I looked up, stunned, and stared at Eric. Did they really go to the amusement park together? I had wondered why Eric was so bright and cheerful today. Turns out it was because he had met someone he liked. Eric didn't even glance at me. His gaze was entirely focused on Annie. It finally hit me without me realizing. They had become a real family, and I had become the outsider. I didn't say anything else, just grabbed my still-packed suitcase and headed to my room. I was almost relieved that the first thing I did when I got home was clean the house, not unpack my clothes. I couldn't bear to stay here any longer. When Eric saw me dragging my suitcase, he even laughed. "Rachel, what are you throwing another tantrum about? Are you planning to go find David again?" I looked at him. "What's wrong with leaving?" "I won't interrupt your happy family." Annie glanced at Eric, then spoke. Rachel, did you misunderstand something? I snorted. You're wearing a necklace my husband bought. And you say I misunderstood? Eric shouted angrily. Enough, Rachel. I didn't say anything when you went out with another man. What gives you the right to be upset? I stared at Eric in disbelief. So, just because I'm married, I'm not allowed to have any male friends. And what's more, nothing happened between David and me. Why did Eric keep insulting me like this? But now, I didn't want to explain anything to him anymore because no matter what I said he wouldn't believe me. Fine, Eric. If you want it that way, then let's get a divorce. Eric didn't expect me to say the word divorce. His face instantly darkened. After a pause he looked at me coldly. Rachel, don't regret this. I smiled, feeling strangely relieved. I've already scheduled an appointment with a lawyer. Well, meet tomorrow. I glanced at Mike. He was afraid I would take him with me and hid behind Annie. I smiled at him. Mike, don't worry. From now on, I'm no longer your mom. I shifted my gaze to Annie. She looked away, her eyes full of guilt. But honestly, I didn't care about the affair between her and Eric anymore. Annie, congratulations. Susan, seemingly not believing I would actually divorce Eric, said something before closing the door. Eric, don't worry. Rachel won't dare to divorce you. He's just a useless woman. Who would want her? I didn't hear Eric's response, but I was sure he thought I would never go through with it. But this time, I was serious. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the hotel. I didn't even take off my shoes. I just collapsed onto the bed. For the first time in years, I had a good night's sleep. I didn't have to worry about my son or fear making a mistake that would anger them all. When I woke up, it was already morning. David had called me multiple times. I called him back and the phone connected quickly, but to my surprise it was a child's voice on the other end. Hello, is there something you need with my dad? Wait, my dad? When did David get married? Why hadn't I known? At the cafe. David walked in holding a child's hand. He smiled and asked, Rachel, have you been waiting long? I smiled and looked at them. Not for long. By the way, this is my son Jerry. Jerry, this is Rachel auntie. Jerry looked about the same age as Mike, but he was much cuter. He was polite, always giving me sweet smiles as if he really liked me. I looked at David, still feeling somewhat confused. But this was David's private matter and I didn't want to ask. However, David spoke up on his own. Rachel, this is my adopted child. I nearly spit out the water I was drinking at his words. You? What? I asked, stunned. David looked at me seriously and then grinned. My dad always hoped I'd have a child, but I didn't want to get married. I coughed twice. But didn't your dad get mad when you adopted a child? Don't worry. Jerry's so lovable that my dad keeps asking me to bring him home. Jerry raised his hand obediently. Rachel auntie, don't worry, Grandpa likes me a lot. I couldn't help but smile at Jerry. He was so adorable. Just then my phone rang. It was Eric. David glanced at me but didn't say anything. I answered the phone. Is there something you need? Eric /S voice was a bit raspy. Where's the black tie? In the first drawer on the right side of the closet. I didn't bother masking the coldness in my voice. You called me just for this. There was a long silence before Eric finally spoke again. Wait, where's Mike's water bottle? I furrowed my brow. Eric, enough. You're asking me about a water bottle. His voice grew louder. Rachel, don't forget we're not divorced yet. If I don't ask you, who should I ask? Right? Thanks for the reminder. We're not divorced yet. Eric's tone shifted, oddly more cheerful. Good. As long as you know. I sneered. Oh, I know. I'll see you at the lawyer's office this afternoon. I could almost picture Eric's expression on the other end. His free babysitter was finally running off, and I was sure he was furious. As expected, Eric's voice turned dark again. Rachel, are you serious about divorcing me? Eric, don't forget. You agreed to it yesterday. What about your beloved son? You just don't care anymore. Mike broke my heart. Sometimes I thought I might be better off without him. I replied coldly, I don't want Mike either. He's all yours. Don't worry. I have no regrets. I could hear Eric's heavy breathing before he abruptly hung up the phone. I put my phone back in my bag and looked up to find David and Jerry staring at me intently. I froze for a second, then smiled. What's wrong? Jerry came over and hugged me. Rachel auntie, don't be sad. He'll be your son from now on, okay? I looked at David, somewhat dazed. David smiled at me. Don't misunderstand, he's just trying to comfort you. I held Jerry in my arms and for some reason I felt tears welling up in my eyes. After Jerry was sent home, David and I walked down the street. He asked, are you really going through with the divorce? I nodded. Yes. And I've already moved out. I don't want anything except for what's entitled to me from the marriage. David stopped walking and turned to me, his expression serious. Did Eric cheat on you? I met his gaze and answered calmly, that doesn't matter, that I just can't live like this anymore. Eric, Mike, Susan, in that house. Almost everyone took my sacrifices for granted. Tears filled my eyes involuntarily. I've forgotten what it was like to be myself. David pulled me into an embrace. Don't worry. I support you. I spent the whole afternoon waiting at the lawyer/'s office, but Eric never showed up. With no choice, I called him again. The moment the phone connected, I spoke first. Eric, where are you? Sorry, Rachel. Eric still handling work. It was Annie who answered the phone. I paused for a moment, then said, let him pick up the phone. But I just told you he's working. Annie started. But I couldn't hold back my frustration. I said, let him pick up. There was silence on the other end before Eric's impatient voice finally came through. Rachel, are you done with your tantrum? Eric, I've been waiting for you all afternoon. I am not as free as you. The divorce papers will come from my lawyer. I spoke firmly. Tomorrow is the deadline. Eric's voice was laced with anger. Are you that impatient? I'll come to your office tomorrow. Without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone. Back at the hotel, I posted my job search details online. But after being a stay-at-home wife for 10 years, I had only a degree and 2 years of work experience. With such qualifications, almost no company was willing to hire me. However, after persistent effort, one company finally agreed to interview me. The next day I looked at the woman in the mirror, wearing a professional skirt suit, slim figure and a bright smile. After 10 years of being a housewife, I had only worn what was convenient. Tight pants and skirts were beyond my imagination. I used to go makeup-free every day, which made me forget that I wasn't that bad looking after all. Everyone deserves a second chance and it's never too late. I applied lipstick, then headed out. First I went to Eric's company to pick up the divorce papers, then off to the interview. When I entered the building, Eric's assistant rushed over to me. Rachel, Mr. Smith is away on a business trip. He said. I looked at her thinking, what trick is Eric pulling this time? I asked, what did he say? The assistant nodded slightly. He said the divorce papers are at home. And he wants you to sign them there. What was wrong with Eric? I flagged a cab back to that nightmare of a place. I could hear cheers coming from inside. I rang the doorbell, and it was Susan who answered. She rolled her eyes when she saw me. Aren't you supposed to be divorcing Eric? Why are you back? I smiled lightly. I'm just here to sign the divorce papers. Once inside, I realized Eric had lied to me again. He wasn't on a business trip, he was at home. When he saw me enter, Eric actually gave me a rare smile. Honestly, after 10 years of marriage, Eric still kept in good shape. Looking much the same as he did when we were dating. He was handsome in that captivating way, no wonder I fell for him back then. But now his smile didn't stir anything in me. Maybe I really didn't love him anymore. I calmly looked at him. Where are the divorce papers? His expression shifted. He looked annoyed. Mike misses you. At the mention of Mike, who had been playing with toys on the floor, he looked up and said, I don't miss Mom. I like Annie. I wasn't even angry anymore. Fine, if my only child didn't love me. There was nothing left to hold on to. Eric slapped Mike hard and yelled, Mike, go inside. Mike immediately started crying, pointing at me. I hate Mom. When Mom comes back, Dad doesn't like me anymore. Susan rushed over, glared at me and hugged Mike, taking him back to his room. Eric, where are the divorce papers? I asked calmly. Eric looked at me. After what felt like an eternity, he handed me the papers. As I reached for them, he didn't let go. Do you really want to go this far? I haven't cheated, he added. I smiled at him. Eric, after 10 years. Our marriage has come to an end. Whether you've cheated or not, we're just not right for each other anymore. Eric paused and then let go. I signed the divorce papers and finally left that house. A sense of calm washed over me, and I felt incredibly relieved. I was about to take a cab to my interview when a car stopped in front of me. Rachel, Mommy. Dad and I came to pick you up. It was David and Jerry. Ever since the coffee shop meeting, Jerry had started calling me Mom every time he saw me. I couldn't help but wonder if Mike had been as well behaved as Jerry. Would I have stayed a little longer in that house? But there's no point in wondering about what ifs. Jerry wasn't Mike and I had already left. I smiled and got into the car. How did you know I was here? David flashed a handsome smile. I told you, I'll always be by your side. Jerry smiled at us and I felt unexpectedly shy, lowering my head a bit. That day David took me to my interview and amazingly I passed it. I rented a place next door to David's. He told me the owner had just gone abroad for work. I end my free time. I would go with David and Jerry to the amusement park or out shopping. Eric and the others never came looking for me, and for a year, we lived peacefully. I never expected to run into them at Jerry's parent-teacher conference. When I arrived at the classroom, it was already packed with people. Suddenly, a weak voice called out to me, "Mom." I turned around and saw Mike, sitting next to Eric. I end that instant. The air seemed to freeze. I turned away and didn't look at them again. Jerry tapped my hand and said, expectantly, "Mom, Teacher Lucy wants you to come up and speak." Only then did I realize that the teacher and other parents were all looking at me. I froze for a moment and then went up to the stage. "Hello everyone, I'm Jerry's mother and I'm very happy to meet all of you." When I said I was Jerry/us mom, I could feel a pair of eyes staring at me from somewhere in the audience. I ignored them, but I couldn't escape their gaze. After the parent meeting, I took Jerry's hand, ready to leave. Jerry asked, "Mom, why didn't Dad come?" I looked down and smiled. "Jerry, Daddy is really busy with work. So I came instead." I patted his head and encouraged him. "Jerry, you did so well. Your craft project came in first place. I'm so proud of you. Yay. Mom, can we have pizza tonight?" I smiled and agreed. Suddenly I saw two figures standing ahead, Eric and Mike. Mike shouted, "Mommy." I looked at them, intending to ignore them. As we passed by, Eric grabbed my hand angrily and asked, "Whose son is this?" When I answered, Eric's face darkened even more. "How come I didn't know you had such a big son?" I snorted, "Why do you need to know?" I yanked my hand away from his, about to walk off, when Mike grabbed my arm, his voice breaking with tears. "Mom, I'm your son." I turned around, looking at him coldly. "I'm not your mother. The mother you want is Annie. Don't you love her so much?" Mike burst into tears, rushing towards me to hug me. "Mom, don't go, you're my mom. I missed you so much." I closed my eyes and, with a heavy heart, pried his hands off me. Eric's voice was hoarse. "Rachel, are you really this cruel?" A wave of inexplicable sorrow hit me. No matter what, he was still my biological son. But I couldn't soften my heart. "Eric, we've been divorced for a year now. Mike's guardian is you and you've remarried. And your new wife is Annie, the one both you and Mike like so much. So what right do you have to call me heartless?" Eric opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. I knew from David that he had married Annie after our divorce. Just 1 month later they were married. I didn't understand why they were doing this now. Had Annie not been serving them like I had, so they remembered me? If that was the case, they were truly despicable. This time, I took Jerry's hand and walked away. They didn't try to stop me. What I hadn't expected was for Annie to come looking for me. She looked terribly haggard, though she was still wearing her usual pristine white dress. Annie sat down in front of me and smiled. "Rachel, I think I finally understand you." I gave a faint smile. "Understand me? What for?" Annie took a sip of coffee, and when she spoke again, there was a trace of sadness in her voice. "You were right. Back then I deliberately seduced Eric. And Mike, I deliberately pleased him. Whatever he wanted I gave him. Rachel, you know how children at that age like adults who let them do whatever they want." I looked at Annie without speaking. Honestly, I had already guessed all of this. But what did it matter? Even without Annie, there would always be other women. Annie glanced at me apologetically, then spoke slowly. "I got Mike to talk and I found out that you went abroad, so I purposely sent him back home to spend more time with Eric. I didn't expect that. The moment I started showing Eric I was interested, he kissed me first." I looked at Annie calmly. "What's the point of telling me this? I've already divorced him and you've married him as you wanted." I scoffed. "Could it be that you're regretting it now that married life isn't what you imagined?" To my surprise, Annie choked up. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Yes, I regret it. I can / stand married life with Eric. He actually wants me to quit my job and stay at home. And his mother, Susan, every time I open my eyes she's picking at me. I can / stand cooking 3 meals a day. I can / just give up my job and stay home cleaning all the time." Annie buried her face, as though overwhelmed by pain. "It wasn't like this before we got married." Seeing her like this, I actually felt a bit of sympathy for her. "You're still young. You can still make better choices." Annie shook her head. "No, I can't divorce him." I didn't understand. "Why not?" Annie grabbed my hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "Because my family is in debt and after marrying Eric he helped me pay it off." "Rachel, you must think I seduced Eric for money, right? But back then I really liked him. He's so handsome, so gentle. And he treats people so well that I shook my head inwardly. Eric was kind to others, too bad he didn't extend that kindness to me. How much did he help you pay off? Annie hesitated for a long time before finally answering. 500,000. I paused for a moment, then spoke again. Annie, did he tell you that this money bought your future? Annie shook her head. You're married to him now and he helped you pay off your debts. If there's no contract, you don't have to pay him back. Of course, if you want to repay him, that doesn't mean you can't divorce. I held Annie's hand. Speaking from my own experience. Annie, marriage doesn't mean you've sold your whole life to Eric. Everyone deserves a second chance. When I got home, David was cooking dinner. It smells so good. I slipped into my slippers and ran into the kitchen. David turned around and smiled at me. I'll be ready soon. I didn't know how to describe my relationship with David. Compared to lovers, we were more like extremely close friends. Besides, over the past year, he never once told me he liked me. I lived next door to him, and sometimes I'd come over to eat. Or we'd take care of Jerry together. Jerry called us mom and dad, and I didn't mind. In fact, I felt happy. Compared to being together, I enjoyed this life more. Why does a woman have to get married? When I was with Eric, he was just as considerate. But once we got married, everything changed. I didn't want to gamble with David. What are you thinking about? When I came back to reality, I saw David looking at me seriously. I smiled faintly and shook my head. Late at night, I received a call from Eric. His voice was hoarse. Rachel. I miss you so much. I was stunned for a moment. Eric, what's wrong with you? I don't know. I just really miss you. And Mike, he misses you too. I responded coldly. Eric, stop calling me. We both need to move on. There was silence on the other end for a long time, so long that I couldn't even hear Eric's breathing. I raised my voice. Eric? Eric. A weak voice came through. I'm here. I sighed, trying to sound normal as I spoke. Please let me go. You might regret it, but I don't. I am happy now, really happy. Can you please stop bothering me? I heard a choked sound. Was Eric crying? All right. I hung up and lay in bed for a long time, unable to sleep. The next day I went to work with dark circles under my eyes. When I got to my desk, Annie sent me a message. Rachel, I've divorced him. I paused for a moment, then replied, congratulations. Eric seems to miss you a lot, and Mike, he cries every day asking to see you. When Eric's mom talks about you, Mike rebukes her and tells her not to say those things about you. So Rachel, you really can't. I understood what Annie meant, but unfortunately it was already too late. Annie. You can't fall into the same trap twice. I sent the message and Annie didn't reply. After work, I saw Eric standing in front of his car, arms crossed. It seemed like the phone call wasn't enough to make things clear. He wanted to do this facetto face. As soon as he saw me, Eric stood up straight. Rachel, I took a step back. Do you need something? Eric looked at me with a hurt expression, but unfortunately, I no longer felt any emotional response to him. After a moment, he spoke as though expecting some praise. I've already sent my mom back to her hometown. And I've gotten a divorce. And Mike understands your difficulties now. He won't say anything hurtful anymore. So, will you come back with me? Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. Eric, are you serious? Do you really think the problems between us can be solved? Eric became agitated and grabbed my hand. Why not? I pulled my hand away forcefully. I don't love you anymore. That's the key issue. Eric shouted, but I love you. Let's not argue whether you love me or not. When I loved you, you didn't love me. Now that you love me, I don't love you anymore. So we're just two parallel lines that will never intersect. We can't be together. I looked at Eric with some pity. Eric, wake up. This is reality, not a novel. I can't just forget the hurt you caused me in the past. Rachel. Mom? I hadn't noticed, but David had brought Jerry with him. That moment, I held Jerry's hand and smiled. Let's go. Eric didn't go crazy again, but I could feel his burning gaze as if he wanted to tear me apart. When we got home, David pulled me onto the balcony. He looked at me seriously, a hint of pain in his eyes as he asked, do you still love Eric? I shook my head and answered firmly, no. David broke into a radiant smile. It's been a year, so I guess you've really forgotten about him. Then Rachel, can you give me a chance? I froze. So all this time had been trying to help me forget Eric. I never thought I'd expect this moment, but it was David. After all, I lowered my head and said, if you change, I'll leave. Life isn't about living without love. I just wanted to give myself another chance. David pulled me into his arms. I won't let you regret it. Trust me, okay? I felt like I wanted to cry. But I smiled and said, okay. And just like that, we began a life full of hope and beauty.